I'm back to rocking with Jeremiah Holloway, who knows everything and all things about the UNC Tar Heels and what's going on. Good morning, my friend. How you doing?
Good morning. Good morning.
Good morning.
What's going on with you? How you doing?
Man, I'm doing pretty good. We got back from Minnesota on Friday night. It was kind of funny because, well, maybe not funny necessarily, but we had to wait about 45 minutes after we landed because there were storms in the area, so we couldn't. They couldn't get us to a gate once we landed, so we had to wait a little bit. But other than that, man, I've been doing good and just getting ready for this UNC's home opener this week against Charlotte at 3:30, man. So just getting ready for that.
So let's talk about that. Obviously, there was some level of disappointment when Max Johnson went down against Minnesota. But of course, our Connor Harrell stepped in. That's my homeboy from right outside of Birmingham. I just want to get that report. But talk about what's going to happen with him. I mean, obviously getting majority of the reps is in practice, I'm sure. And what's been the mood of the team, knowing that he's going to be the guy that's taking the snaps right now?
Yeah, we got to talk to some of those players yesterday, and one of the things that they were saying was it feels pretty similar to what they already had because of the fact that Max and Connor, since they did both compete in the spring and in the fall, since they split those reps, Connor kind of already has that mindset of how to approach practice as a starter and how to approach practice being ready to play. I know one thing that Mac Brown did talk about before the Minnesota game was the idea of having two quarterbacks play. Now, personally, I'm not necessarily sure how that would have played out had Max not got hurt.
Right.
But I will say that, the way that Connor Harrell approaches things, he does approach things as if he's going to play, as if he's going to start. He had a very, obviously successful high school career, won a couple of state championships and things like that. So the mood around the team, and if you talk to Connor, he'll very much say, everything's the same, things aren't, too different for him. So that's kind of the way that he's approaching it. But I think a lot of those guys, they're somewhat used to, seeing Connor approach things this way because he started that bowl game last year, the Duke's Mayo Bowl game against West Virginia. So he does have, even at the college level, it's not a ton of starting experience, but he can say that he's been there and done that before. And it's funny enough, I didn't really realize it until yesterday that it'll be his first career, home start at North Carolina because I remember last year he got in against Campbell in the fourth quarter, but this would be his first time, starting an offense in Chapel Hill. So that's going to be something to watch for these next few games before conference play starts.
Outstanding. We're talking with Jeremiah Holiday from Inside Carolina. We're talking a little Tar Heel football, and coming off of that last game, and with Max going down, a lot of things, but. Talk a little bit about the defense, just looking at the game, looking at where they traditionally have been. Talk about the defense, and, they seem to be flying around. They seem to be a lot more aggressive than they've been in the past.
Yeah, they played noticeably different. I think especially up front, they had some guys up front that were, just flying around there. That's the word that they like to use, flying around. You had Jabari Ritchie, who's a senior at this point. He ended up with those 3 sacks. He even had that one where he was running around chasing the quarterback down. This guy's about, 300 pounds or so, and the way that he was able to move, it was very impressive. And I think his performance in a lot of ways was a byproduct of the way that Jeff Collins likes to run his defense. He likes to have those guys playing aggressive. One thing that they were pointing out was they did have a few missed tackles during that game. And, part of that could be a product of, just playing so fast. You want to still make sure that you have your technique down. But other than that, I think that's a style of play that actually fits the players on this team. Now the key is sustaining it. One concern that some people have is, well, last year against South Carolina, you had the 9 sacks, the very first play, the very first game of the season, and everybody's excited. And, the defense actually trailed off after that. They had a few good games to start the year, but they actually trailed off a little bit after that. So really the key right now is to sustain that. And I think one thing that I'm going to watch for from a defensive standpoint in these next 3 games that they should win, I'm just looking at not necessarily the win or the loss because like I said, they should win, but like how those wins come about. You can't necessarily help who you play, which is why I do give them credit for how well they played against Minnesota as a defense. But now it's just a matter of, do you take care of business? Do you handle your assignments? And if you can find some sort of continuity within those next 3 games and, continue what you did against Minnesota, then I do think that's something that you can sustain when you get to the ACC and you do see some teams, that have obviously, solid running games and things like that. So, yeah, I'm very interested to see how, this new style of defense continues because, like I said, I think it's a good fit for this roster.
All right.
Awesome. We're talking to Jeremiah Holloway inside Carolina, talking about UNC's upcoming game against Charlotte. Are there any other updates or injuries that we should be worried about or concerned about coming out? I think it's Holly still out, and Thomas was questionable a few days ago.
Yeah. Their safety, Will Hardy. Of course, he's day-to-day right now. He's a guy that. He had been banged up, several times last year. He actually played through a lot of that stuff, last season. But he's one to watch out for. Even though they're pretty deep at that safety position, so if he isn't able to play, I still think that they'll be able to find some success back there. And then of course, one guy who did play last week was Amari Campbell, who played with that big club on his hand because he had broke. He had broke something in that hand during fall camp, but he was still able to play. He actually forced a fumble with that club on his hand. We were actually talking to him about that yesterday. He hopes to get that thing off probably in the next 2 weeks or so. Yeah. But outside of that, those are really the main ones to watch for. But they entered that game also. They entered that Minnesota game, very healthy, and walked out of there, pretty good too. So right now they look like they're in good shape.
I tell you, Jeremiah Holloway, we're talking to inside Carolina. What's interesting, and this is just a homer in me, with Charlotte coming up there and followed by North Carolina Central, followed by James Madison, followed by Duke, Pittsburgh, and Georgia Tech, and Virginia. Hell, Carolina could be like 7-0 going into the Florida State game.
Yes.
And we've seen what Florida State is looking like. Then they got Wake Forest at Boston College. I'm telling you. Now, come on, Mac Brown.
9-0.
But Jeremiah, I really think, though.
You always start out like that.
I think the strength is gonna be, unfortunately, who's taking the snaps. I think a lot of attention is going to be on the quarterback. Because I think defensively, you guys already talked about, I think they – seems like they got that right, but I think the leadership of the quarterback is going to be important if they can make it through the rest of like 7-0 or some crazy number like that going forward. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree with you. Specifically with that first point you made, the ACC in the first week of the season, especially if you count the week 0 games, I mean, it pretty much opened up a little bit because of the fact that Florida State obviously was heavily favored to finish very high in that conference. If they start out 0-2 and they already have a conference loss, I mean that opens things, or there are 2 conference losses for that matter. And I will say this too, when it comes to the quarterback, like I'm not necessarily looking for Connor Harrell to put up big numbers, or in other words, he doesn't have to put up big numbers necessarily because they have Amari Hampton back there and they can chew up clock. Because if you guys remember, that third quarter, Minnesota barely had the ball, because they had North Carolina opened up with an 8-minute drive.
That's right.
Then they forced a 3-and-out. Then they held the ball for the rest of the quarter. Right. So they have that ability to chew the clock where they need to. And then Connor Harrell, I mean, he does have an arm on him. It's just a matter of maintaining that consistency, and also getting guys open. I thought they weren't able to get a lot of guys open, and so they have some players on that defensive side of the ball, but they didn't get a lot of guys open. So I'm interested to see what they can do from a play calling standpoint. To get guys in space more often in that passing game. And again, if Connor Harrell's the guy that goes out and he's more of he throws 190 yards a game, but you have Amari Hampton running for 100 plus yards a game, you can win like that if you play defense and you control the clock. As long as Connor is someone that can manage the game and keep the ball out of harm's way and not turn it over, that's a formula for success, and you can win like that. And
yeah, we're gonna see. He got an opportunity. I mean, the schedule is very favorable, and we'll see. Hey, Jeremiah, tell people how they can follow you, man, when you're not on here. How can they follow you?
Yeah, for sure. So my Twitter is going to be JX Holloway, and then InsideCarolina.com is where you can find my stuff and everybody's stuff that's over there. So all season football, basketball. We're going to have a lot of content on there. We follow the team around as well. So that's where you can find my stuff and find the rest of the team as well.
Okay, man. Thank you for giving us your time, man. Appreciate you. This is a really good inside stuff. Make us understand what the hell's going on. Good work, brother. And we'll talk to you soon. Take care.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Our goal here on the Sports Shop is to rock with people who rock with us, and we got some guys that they're out there in the trenches, particularly at a lot of these schools like Carolina.